Well, good morning, everyone. We are continuing in the book of Esther, and in my reading this morning, I came through chapters 4, 5, 6, and tonight before bed, chapter 7. And chapter 4 has this wonderful verse in it. If you're familiar with the book of Esther, you'll know that Haman, who is an enemy of the Jewish people, concocts a scheme to wipe out all the Jews in the Persian kingdom. And Mordecai, who is the uncle of Esther. Esther has now been promoted to queen, treats her to go to the king to see if he can help undo what Haman has plotted against the Jews. And in chapter 4, he tells Esther, "Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews." So, Esther, even though you live in the palace, don't think that you're going to escape just like anyone else. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then there shall enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? He says, if you don't do it, God's going to save the Jews some other way, because God will not let his covenant people perish entirely. God promised to always save a remnant of them. He said, if you don't act, you and your father's house will be destroyed. But Esther, did you ever think about this? Maybe you came to the kingdom, came to be the queen, because this time was coming and you would be right in the right place to make a difference. And this is a wonderful thing for us to consider, that in our life, that God has placed us strategically in our homes and in the generation in which we live to fulfill a specific purpose for him. In Psalm 139, it's said of the Lord that he formed my inward parts, that you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as of yet there were none of them. This psalm reminds us that God is working in our life from the time we are born. He knows the day of our birth, and he also knows every day that we'll encounter until the day of our death. All of that is before his eyes, and it's open for him. And in Jeremiah, it goes further and says that before he formed Jeremiah in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I sanctified you and ordained you as a prophet to the nation. So he goes on to even say, even before you were born, I knew who you would be. I knew what I wanted you to do. I've had a plan for your life. And I'm placing you in a proper time, a proper place, so that you can do my will. Going back to Esther, she was placed strategically near the king so that she could undo the wicked plans of Haman. But where have you been placed, and what are you being called to do? You may not be in a palace, but that doesn't mean that you have less of an important job to do. And the one thing that I'll remind us all of, that if we are going to stand for God in our time and in our generation, it's going to require courage. Esther, when she would go to the king, when she was not bidden by the king to come, she had to go stand before him. And if he didn't want to see her and didn't hold out his scepter, she would be killed. So she had to take her life in her hands to go and see the king on her own accord. That it took great courage for her to go in and plead on the behalf of her people. And the same thing's going to be true from us. If we're going to stand for God in our generation and in our day, it's going to require courage for us to stand up and rely on God and trust that he knows the day that we were born, he knows the day that we are going to die, that our job is not to worry about extending our life, losing our life. It's to live for Christ. When Joshua was going into the promised land, the Lord said to him, "Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you, and do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do all according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. It's going to take courage for us to stand for Christ. Just like it took courage for Esther, just like it took courage for Paul, just like it took courage for Jesus when he stood for Christ and he went to the cross on our behalf. Be strong and very courageous is what God tells us to do in the day in which we live. And when we do that, we'll find out that we never had to be afraid in the first place, because the Lord, our God, is with us wherever we go. Have a great day. Bye.